Hey everybody, it's Darren. It is Wednesday, and this is not going to be me in my normal capacity. Here on Section 1904, John and Darnay Tripp coming up in a little bit, but to start this podcast, and apologies in advance, a little bit of a sad note. I did want to take time to say thank you to so many of you guys and so many listeners of the radio show over the years who have reached out to me publicly, via social media, privately, people that I got to know that I consider friends, people who never met me but wanted to say a couple of kind words or ask how my dad was doing. Those of you that have been on this with me for the last couple of, not just days, weeks, months, but the last couple of years. No, it's been a lot of back and forth with me and him in Florida. And he's had his ups, he's had his downs. But my dad passed away on Tuesday night, peacefully. Had a chance to say goodbye, as did my aunt who lives close by, as did my cousin who lives close by. We were the three people who probably saw him most in terms of blood relatives. But it means a lot to me that so many of you would take the time to do that. And I know it meant a lot to him as well. It really did. It meant a lot to him. I would tell him when I would mention that I was doing the broadcast from West Palm Beach or wherever in Florida, that I had so many people that had obviously never met him, but would inquire about how he was doing and say, hey, we're rooting for him. We wish him well. And I think it really mattered to him. And I did feel like I wanted to express that sentiment to all of you and to thank you for doing that. It helped me through a lot of difficult times, and I do believe that it helped him. Yeah, I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about him. Yeah, he was 83 years of age. Barry Paul Smith, born in New York City in 1942. And just celebrated his 83rd birthday this past February. He was not a classic father-son relationship. I'd be lying if I said I can remember a lot of tosses of the baseball in the backyard, things like that, father-son picnics. Not exactly the relationship that we had. He and my mom divorced when I was pretty young, and he was still in my life, but it was a lot of time spent with him. When you're the child of divorce, it's just a different experience altogether. Sports were a big part of our connection. My earliest memories with him would be watching Super Bowls and knowing and learning early on that he was wagering on these Super Bowls. He was the fourth of six siblings, fourth of six kids, and it was a sports family. A lot of Notre Dame football on the TV on Saturdays, lots of NFL, lots of baseball games. My grandparents were in a social club with baseball players. So, it was just always part of our upbringing that sports were on. My dad would take me to baseball games when he got tickets to go to Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium. We would do that sort of stuff. So it was really sports, and it doesn't take an expert to realize this is how I gravitated towards sports broadcasting. It's the thing that we had in common. And, I think it certainly gave us plenty to chat about. Last time I saw him was last Friday. We were watching the Wimbledon semifinal in his hospital room and talking about Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz in the final on Sunday. So, all the way up into the end, that's the bond really that we had, the thing that we had most in common. And, I know he listened to this, maybe not this podcast, but he listened to the radio show a lot. Once we figured out how to download different apps for his phone, he would sit around his cigar shop in Stuart, Florida, and he would play the show for his buddies there when they weren't figuring out the world's problems. And I know it gave him a sense of pride to tell everybody in the cigar shop that his son was a radio host in San Diego. And, because we didn't have that classic father-son relationship, I think he would like things that he knew I liked. He liked Phillip Rivers because Phillip Rivers used to come on the show. He liked talking about the Padres because he knew that the Padres were a big part of what we did. So, he would always ask about that. How's Phillip Rivers doing? How's this doing? How's that doing? How's Jake Pete? How's AJ Hinch doing? He would always talk about that. He met AJ at my wedding, and always used to talk about how excited he was that here was this guy, this World Series winning manager who was at my wedding, and that always made me feel good to know that he was listening. As I said, it wasn't a classic father-son relationship, but as the saying goes, it doesn't matter who he was; it matters who you remember him being. And I remember him just being a very caring and a very sincere person. And I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him a lot. I think we probably got closer over the last couple of years as he was dealing with things. But he was mostly happy. He was not somebody who wanted much more than be in the warm weather, be in the sunshine, be close to a beach, and smoke a cigar. Those were the things that made him happy. And I appreciated that about him. That he didn't have a long list of things that he felt like he needed to do before he passed. He said, "No, this is what I want. This is what I want to do." And for the most part, that's how he lived. And if he could get himself outside and sit in the sun and have some sunshine on his face and have a little bit of a suntan, then that made him happy. And it made him happy. It made me happy. So, yeah. He was an interesting guy. He was a little bit of a hellraiser when he was growing up. 5 boys and a girl, and had a little bit of trouble in his life. But even when he was good, he was trying to be good. He was just sort of finding himself. I'm thinking about a story that he told me once, that he and his brother Brian, who has since passed on, also, they were the Smith boys, the Smith brothers, raising all sorts of hell where they grew up. And one day they were driving back to their house, and they lived around the corner from an Italian restaurant, and they saw smoke coming out of the restaurant. Now, these two probably were coming back home, having a couple of pops someplace, and saw smoke, pulled over, decided, hey, we got to go in there. We got to see what's going on here. And I guess somebody had thrown some like a smoke bomb, smoke grenade. I never really fully got those details. Just went with the story as he would tell it. And my dad and my brother kicked the smoke device out into the parking lot. And then, of course, because they were who they were, they started kicking it around and having a game of soccer. So sure enough, the police come by, because the police get called, and they see these two guys kicking the smoke thing around in the parking lot, and they go, "Oh, those are the Smith brothers." So they automatically said, "Well, we know what's going on here." Took them both, threw them in the back of the paddy, took them down to the bay, and probably gave them a little bit of a beating. But even when they were doing something good, they sort of had that reputation. And it was okay with my dad. He went on to join the Marines. He spent 4 years in the Marines. He built a very, very successful business in Westchester County, New York. Owned a couple of delis, was a great, great deli owner. Very successful. Business was tough. Won't bore you with all the details, but stuck around, and after my grandmother passed away in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, he moved down to Florida. And that's where he was, and that's what made him happy. And that's where his brother Brian lived, and he got to spend a ton of time with his brother Brian, and he got to spend a ton of time with his sister, Maura. So, he was surrounded by people. Even though I was all the way across the country, we stayed connected, and I always knew that he was around people because people loved being around my dad. They just loved being around him. He had a big personality. And people knew that he cared, and he was authentic, and he was sincere, and that was really important to me. So, Anyhow, I don't know that I'm the right person to talk about the All-Star Game today or to talk about Milan Iloski. I am planning to do the broadcast for SDFC tonight. And, just because I think it's better than the alternative of sitting home. And I think that's what he would want me to do, honestly. I know that becomes a cliche, but I do think that that's what he would want me to do. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I just, again, want to say thank you to everybody. Especially here on this platform. I know every time that I would go, whether it was just something that, hey, there was no reason for concern. I just had a little bit of time after I left iHeart to spend with him. They'd go, everything okay? And I do appreciate that. And I just felt like I really needed to share it with the people who are here. So I will stop and I will say, enjoy the rest of the podcast today. Again, that's, That's a big part of who we were and what our relationship was built on. So I hope you will. I know at times when people write obituaries, they say things like, "Oh, in lieu of flowers, do such and such a thing, or donate to this." And I think what he would want is for people just to enjoy their lives, have a drink, have a cigar, do whatever it is that you do. That's the way he lived. He always used to say, even at 83 years of age, "Dad, you have such a good life, such a long life." And he would say, "We're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time." And he would borrow those lyrics from the song "Forgive Me for Not Knowing Who the Artist Is" after all these years. And, that's certainly the way that I plan on honoring my dad. So the rest of Section 1904 is coming up. And I'm not sure what my status is for the remainder of the week, but I appreciate you listening to this. And thank you again.
Okay. Well, after all of that, after listening to Darren Smith talk about his father, look, I have tears in my eyes. I imagine a lot of people listening do as well. Today's podcast is not meant to be a sad one through and through, but I feel bad for my friend. Losing a parent is never easy, even when with a complicated relationship. So thank you for him for sending that in, for sharing some of that with me and with the audience. And I look forward to hearing him call the SDFC game tonight. And rest in peace, Barry Smith. Sounded like you have a pretty special life and a pretty special son. Joining me today, since Darren is taking the day off, is Darnay Tripp from NBC San Diego. I was trying to look up your title. Your Twitter bio says sports anchor. How are you not sports director yet?
It's a complicated topic, John.
That's fair enough. We'll avoid it completely. I also, looking at your Twitter bio, got reminded of a thing that I forget because you and I have never actually met. We've never actually conversed outside of, I think, tweeting back and forth and occasionally DMing back and forth. And I always forget that you're a Philly native, but it says so in your bio. And there you are wearing a Pretzels and Pints fake Philadelphia Eagles shirt celebrating North Park. So I'm going to take 2 minutes for myself. This is not for the audience. This is not for anybody else. It's just a palate cleanser for me before we get into the sports. As someone who grew up right on the other side of the river and then moved back and spent a lot of time in Philadelphia and hold that city near and dear to my heart. I used to drive under bridge is not the right word. Like a train tracks essentially, but like the big metal things that you would drive under that the train would go through.
The L, yeah.
Yeah, and there was an old mural that someone had painted on the side of the metal thing that said Philadelphia, City of Neighborhoods. And I was like, I've never heard it called City of Neighborhoods before. That's hilarious to me. And so then I got into this thing where anytime I'd meet someone from Philly, I would tell them about this and I would go, what is your favorite neighborhood in Philly? And it led to really fun conversations a lot of the time. So you can either pick where you're from, if you're from a particular neighborhood in Philly that you want to shout out, or just your favorite part of Philly. What is your favorite part of Philadelphia?
That's a great question. We grew up in a couple different spots. We lived near Chestnut Hill when I was in high school and college. We were technically in a neighborhood called Mount Airy, which is great. But Chestnut Hill is like, I'm trying to think of an equivalent. Old cobblestone. It's close to the suburbs. It is within the city line, but right on the edge.
Okay.
And old cobblestone roads. You've got some shops and restaurants.
Wait,
and that sort
I know
of
this
thing.
place. This is the place where if you went there around Christmas time, they would literally have people roasting chestnuts out in front of the stores. Is that the right place, or am I thinking of some other place?
That might be a different place. I don't know if I remember that. But it's cool. It's kind of just like a quaint neighborhood. It's been a while since I've been there. My parents, after, they became empty nesters, they relocated into Center City. And so they're like a couple blocks from City Hall. They're a block from Reading Terminal Market. If you've been to Philly, you're familiar with some of these areas. And we always walk to Rittenhouse Square. Rittenhouse Square is exactly what it sounds like, a nice little outdoor square, park benches. You've got the high rises on either side, great restaurants. And so I'd probably say that area, it's not exactly like a deep cut. It's not like Fishtown or Kensington or some of these other spots.
No one says Kensington.
But that's where we spend a lot of our time, hanging out with my parents, going for walks, especially during the holidays, Christmas shopping, going out to eat. So that's where we spend a lot of our time, and I enjoy it. Old City as well. My mom used to work in Old City, so that whole area you can kind of walk around. Old City's where the Liberty Bell is, Independence Hall, now the Constitution Center. So that's usually where you can find us.
Good answer. I owned a house in Fishtown for a long time. But before that, the 2 years I spent living like a block and a half off of Rittenhouse Square was the best. I love that area so much. Like I literally in my dreams, like half the time I'm still living in that apartment and like going to that grocery store. And like, it was so quaint because like, there wasn't like a Home Depot you went to when you needed stuff. There was like a handyman who had a store on the corner with like all the little things, and you go and you tell him what you're doing and he walk you around. Anyway, I miss Philly. I love Philly. I like talking Philly with people. That's not why you're here today. We're going to talk about sports, and some of it is going to be related to San Diego. Last night was the MLB All-Star Game. There were 4 Padre players who played a role in the MLB All-Star Game, and I hate the All-Star Game. I think it's pointless. I think it's a waste of time. I had it on my TV. I wasn't really paying attention that much. I saw Manny Machado did the catcher did the ABS challenge and got Manny out, and then Dave Roberts laughed about it, and Padre fans were up in arms. I think Robert Suarez gave up a run. I think Morejon gave up a run. Jason Adam was fine. Fernando Tatis stole a base. Like, all these things happen. It's an exhibition game. It doesn't matter. It ended with a home run swing off, which was the best ending to any All-Star game I've ever seen, because it was like if the home run derby was good. Like it literally laid out, this is what the home run derby should be. Everyone gets 3 swings. It's head to head, 1-on-1. And that's it. And the pace was great. And you had better players because it's like the players from the All-Star Game, not the players who decided to enter the home run derby. I was a big fan of it. I loved that moment where like Schwarber basically called his shot, went up and hit 3 home runs and 3 swings to win it for the NL. And I loved the pace of it. And I loved all the players standing in front of the dugouts, cheering for their team, like literally rooting for their guys to win it with home run swings. Little disappointed we didn't get any Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani in there. Like, that would have been fun. But also, like, I think a lot of guys had left. Like, when the teams were up there cheering for them, I'm like, I don't see Tatis or Machado anywhere. I think those guys left like an hour ago. But I thought it was a really fun way to end a very stupid event, which, if you're going to have a stupid event, let it be fun. What were your thoughts?
I enjoyed it so much that when it dawned on me later in the evening that next year's All-Star Game might not end in that manner, I actually got kind of disappointed. I'm like, right? I think they should just rig it so that it's tied after 9 innings so we go to a swing-off, because it was amazing. It was incredibly stupid, but so fun, and it was done efficiently. You got like just enough of it. It wasn't dragged out like the Home Run Derby feels like it's so dragged out. And I think you make a great point. Like, this is a model for what the Home Run Derby should be. Now, you probably need, it lasted, like 10 minutes? So you probably need more than 3 swings. Yeah, maybe give them 10 swings. Maybe there's like 1 extra round. Maybe go from 8 guys down to the final 2 and they slug it out. But I don't think you need, 3 rounds? Let's get rid of the timing element where it's so rushed and you don't even get to, O'Neal Cruz hits a 513-foot homer and you don't even really get to enjoy it because he's now swinging again and it's in the split screen. Whereas yesterday, it was so fun to like have the drama of when they connect, like, okay, is that going to go? And knowing what's on the line. I thought it was awesome. It was strange. I'm all about it. And I hope we see more of it.
Yeah, it was good. Same. I had turned the game off at a certain point and had like walked away and was like turning on like Severance or something like that. And I was like, one last check, see what's going on. And I checked like Blue Sky and X, and all these people are like, a swing off, a home run swing off. What are we doing here? Like Bud Selig jokes, right? And I turned it on and I was like, this was the best All-Star game I've watched in years just because of this, because it was fun and it was stupid. And the players that were there fully bought in. Like totally. Even the guys who weren't swinging, but the guys who were swinging totally bought into the drama, and I have to win this, and I only get a certain amount of swings, so I can't throw any away. And you could tell there was a point at which like even the guys at the plate, they didn't want to sit there and like take pitches all day. They were like, oh no, I can't, like I could sit here and wait for the perfect one, or I could just try and connect and beat the crap out of it. But did find it funny, Kyle Schwarber winning the All-Star MVP, getting 0 hits in the game. I think he's the first guy to ever do that. Shout out Kyle Schwarber. That was good.
I was really wanting the guy from the Rays to get one home run, at least that we'd see Pete Alonso, because Pete Alonso is the home run derby guy. He wasn't in the home run derby this year. And I think there was excitement about like Pete getting ready, gearing up for it. And then he's there. They were clearly going to win if he steps up. He's going to hit a homer. So it's the one thing it was missing. Like, it was cool that Schwarber went 3 for 3, but I just wanted to see. I feel like a Pete Alonso appearance would have completed the whole thing.
I agree. But I was kind of rooting for a tie because I wanted it to just keep going, because I was like, maybe eventually Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani will get pulled out of the clubhouse. Like, come on, guys,
sure.
hit some bombs for the fans. All the fans were on their feet. It was fun. It was fun. The best compliment I could ever give an MLB All-Star game. At the end of the night, it was kind of fun. That's my take on the MLB All-Star game last night. Moving all the way along to not that. Yesterday was a rough day for San Diego FC fans. The last couple days have been rough for San Diego FC fans. I think part of that is because Milan Iloski was like the guy that San Diego was like, that's our guy. Like, he's kissing the badge on his jersey. He's from Escondido. His friends and family are watching from Tony Pepperoni's and Escondido. And like, and it's not one of these, like, it's Chucky where it's like, he's already kind of old. He's going to be good for a few years. Like, he's 25. Like, you could envision them building the team around Milan Iloski and having him just be this dynamic, elite goal scorer for them. And look, he scored 4 goals in a game against the best team in the West at the time. He had proven that he was a really, really good player. And yesterday, him and the team mutually agreed to terminate his loan after he didn't play on Saturday, because the end of that loan was coming up at the end of the month. And Mike Ibarra said, we're going to play the guys that are here. And, like, behind the scenes, Darren got to practice yesterday and texted me, and he was like, so Iloski's not here. I don't see him anywhere. And I was like, where is he? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, maybe he's somewhere signing a contract. And Darren's like, maybe he's on a plane back to Denmark. And then 15 minutes later, boom, here's the press release. He's on a plane on his way back to Denmark. And my very, very quick take is, this is the first time that San Diegans who have bought into this club, like myself, are realizing there is a business side of this that is not always fun. We learned that watching the NFL. We learned it watching baseball. We've learned it watching basketball and even hockey. And now we're learning it watching soccer. There's a business side of this. It doesn't always go the way you want it to. There was a great, story to be told there. Businesses didn't align. And I see both sides of it, because there was a lot of reporting after he left that him and the team both wanted a permanent contract so that he could stay here with San Diego FC, and they were far apart on money. I get that, because from Milan's side of things and his agent's side of things, he's proven he's one of the best goal scorers in the league. He should be paid as such. And from San Diego FC's side, this guy started like 3 games. Like, this could be small sample size. If they pay him like an elite goal scorer and all of a sudden he's not, then they're kind of screwed, and they can't screw their future like that. So you would hope they would find some middle ground. They didn't. Doesn't mean he can't come back to SDFC at some point in the future. Doesn't mean that it's over forever, but for now it's over, and they got to find a way to replace him. But I understand it. Like, I'm not mad at it. I get it. It sucks, but I get it. Are you with me or are you mad?
I think if I were a fan, I'd probably be mad. I try to have a little bit of that separation. I am bummed out because it was a great story. It was fun to cover. He was a really fun guy to talk to. The local element, you have Luca De La Torre, but Luca De La Torre isn't necessarily like a lights out goal scorer. He's also kind of a quiet, subdued personality. Milan showed up and a couple matches in, scores against Dallas, and then has just been on a tear ever since. And the 4-goal match and 10 goals in 471 minutes, just scoring at an incredible rate. Now that does make you think, okay, scoring twice a game is not sustainable. At some point, this is going to tail off. And so I understand from the team standpoint that you're going to factor that into what the valuation looks like and what your offer looks like. I think for somebody like myself, if it's baseball or football or the NBA, you can probably take a stab at they're probably looking for this and the other side's probably looking for that. Being new to covering MLS and these contracts, I don't even know what the proposals would be, how far off they could be, because you could just make it up in Major League Baseball and probably be fairly close. No idea as far as MLS goes. And so that's the tricky thing, is trying to figure out, and hopefully at some point we can, whether it's talking to Milan. Tyler Heaps is scheduled to talk to reporters tonight before the match. So that will certainly be a topic. And from the club standpoint, at least, he'll be able to shed some light. Mike Yvar said that they tried diligently to make it happen, and things didn't come together for whatever reason. I think it's safe to say there's probably some disappointment from Milan's standpoint, if I had to guess. And I certainly get it from the fans. I mean, I thought one of the things social media is good for is just gauging the reaction of a fan base. And there was a pretty overwhelming reaction on Blue Sky, on Twitter, comments on Instagram. People are bummed out. Yeah. And there's even some here goes San Diego sports again. We can't have good things, which is probably a bit of an overreaction.
I saw the curse word, the curse of San Diego. Here it is. It finally hit SDFC.
Yeah, I don't know if but again, I get the disappointment. You would want them to if they're anywhere in the same neighborhood, to figure out a way to make it work out, because he's been phenomenal. He's a local guy. They want to be a reflection of the community. What better way of doing that than having a kid from Escondido that's just lighting it up? So definitely disappointing. And look, I think they feel good about the people they have in their building and their depth, and they've gotten through some injuries. They've gotten through the international window. But if they run into a few matches where they're struggling to score a goal, 1 goal, I mean, if they have any sort of drought, it's going to get brought up, and I think fairly so. Again, not knowing if Milan was asking for just an exuberant number. If that's the case, it is what it is. But when you make a business decision, we're not going to be following what Milan's doing at FC Northland. We're going to be following what happens with SDFC. Yeah. If SDFC has any sort of scoring drought, the name Milan Iloski is going to resurface.
Yeah. And, going forward, even short term, even tonight, Marcus Ingvartsen, I don't know if he's still on the injury report or not, but he's kind of had he's been missing with an injury that the only place I saw it actually listed anywhere, it was listed as a muscle injury, which could literally be anything, except for, I guess, a broken bone or concussion. And he's just been kind of gone. And Iloski kind of came in when Ingvartsen was hurt, and there was a lot of people who were like, oh, they're bringing him in to fill that role while Ingvartsen's hurt. Marcus came back briefly and then disappeared again with seemingly another injury. But if he can come back soon, and he was looking pretty good in the beginning part of the year, maybe it's fine. Maybe we don't even notice. Maybe it's Iloski was good for that period when Ingvartsen was hurt. But if he ends up hurt for a while and, they don't make hay during the transfer window, there could be a big open spot in the, I think the number 9 role, is, as Darren Smith would say. And yeah, it's going to be noticeable if they struggle to score goals. Hopefully they don't. Apparently this Toronto team they're playing tonight stinks. So hopefully this story tomorrow is not a 0-0 tie or SDFC struggles to score enough to beat Toronto. Hopefully it's just they get their feet under them. They beat a bad team. We'll figure out how to replace Milan as soon as we possibly can.
But then you have Vancouver on Saturday. And what did Milan do against Vancouver? So if you don't score 5 goals as a team and beat, your closest competition, I guess Minnesota as well in the West, then again, like there's going to be, I think, fairly so some chatter. But look, I'm interested in hearing what Tyler Heaps has to say tonight. Hopefully we'll get a chance to hear from Milan at some point, his perspective, to get a clear idea of how far apart they were and how things played out, because it's a little bit hard to point the finger because you don't know what Milan was asking for, or you don't know how tight the team was being. So that's the tough part. It makes it a little bit unsatisfying, and I think it's just a bummer. It was such a fun story. His numbers were crazy. He averaged more goals per 90 than 27 out of 30 MLS teams by himself. 1.88 goals per 90. Chicago was at 1.86, and Chicago's the 4th highest scoring team in MLS.
What do you think? Like, I'm sure this question got asked amongst the SDFC front office, but like, what do you think the chances are that he's actually that dude? That like he's actually like not two goals a game, but like every season that he's for the next 4 seasons he would be like leading the league or close to leading the league in goals.
Yeah, but I mean, even if he was like playing a normal amount of minutes, if he was playing Anders minutes and had 9 goals this season, still a very useful player.
Still second on the team.
He's still, you would take that guy in a heartbeat. And so even if there is a considerable dip, you're still looking at a useful player. Now, was he looking for useful, third option type money, or is he looking for 10 goals in 471 minutes, like Messi type money? I don't know. Yeah, and that's what makes this conversation a little bit tricky, because we're not privy to what those conversations were like. All we are left to do is be like, darn, that was really fun, and he's not around anymore. And that's disappointing, because it was a really great story and a fun couple months.
And before I get a stupid email about it, like it's very easy for us as sports fans to be like, oh, you could just build incentives into his contract, right? You pay him like he's young and he hasn't played a lot, but if he leads the league in goals or he scores, 20 goals in a season, he gets this huge bonus that then pays him like he's Lionel Messi. And it's like the CBA in these sports doesn't usually work like that, because that is a way to suppress payment. Because then if it's like, oh, you get this money if you score 20 goals in a season, well, he gets to 19, and then they're like, we're going to try someone else out for a few games. Sorry, Milan. Like there's reasons why professional athletic contracts are not completely incentivized for stats, and they actually pay you, they kind of prepay you for performance.
Well, and if you've read up on MLS contract and roster structure, I mean, good luck. That's, again, another one of the things we're having to kind of learn on the fly a little bit. And the way this roster was built, it didn't kind of throw us into that territory too much. There were some, trades and some general allocation money that got moved around, that sort of thing. But it is a complex structure in terms of the way the rosters come together and how money is used and cap limits and here and there. So it's probably not as cut and dry as, say, baseball, where there's no salary cap and you just pay a guy essentially whatever he wants. You have the arbitration stuff that gets kind of weird, but beyond that, it's a little bit easier to kind of take a stab at what might be going on. MLS is tough, especially, like I said, being fairly new to it.
I love that you just yada, yada, yada over the CBT. Like it's not a complicating factor at all. Speaking of, like, I kind of learned the little intricacies of like how baseball teams are built and run financially by playing a lot of Out of the Park. I don't know if you've ever played Out of the Park. It's a computer baseball game. It's a simulated game. So you're not the players, you're not pitching, you're not hitting, you're not doing anything. You're just roster building. And if you want, you can also be the manager and just make decisions in addition to roster building. And, each team has, some of them have really rich owners who are like, spend whatever you want. And some have cheap owners that are like, no, you have to limit it to this. And the owner gives you goals and you have to hit the goals. Otherwise you get fired. And I loved that game. I haven't played it in like a year, but I loved that game. And that game taught me a lot about how baseball works. And there's a soccer version of it called Football Manager that I've tried to play as like an EPL team, and I just got overwhelmed because I didn't know anything about soccer, and I like literally nothing about soccer. I think I need to get Football Manager, because I guarantee you, if I play that a little bit with SDFC, I'm going to come back and be like, did you know they could do this with the roster? Oh my God, I have this great idea. That'll be stupid, and it won't actually make sense. Speaking of the San Diego Padres, I'm going to get to some of my stupid San Diego Padres ideas. The trade deadline is 2 weeks away, 2 weeks and a day, I think.
31st, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're coming up on it. And the Padres, it seemed like everyone was hinting that, well, congruence of things. They were hinting that once the MLB draft was over, that the Padres could focus on the trade market. Draft is not now over. There was also not that Kevin Acey's right all the time, but there was a thing from Kevin Acey before the All-Star break where he said that Luis Campusano was going to get a shot at catching for the Padres after the All-Star break because they realized how bad the catching situation is. He's now back in El Paso. Doesn't mean he can't come back before Friday's game in DC, but he's back in El Paso. So I'm wondering if there's a trade that's about to be made. AJ Preller tends to make these deals a little bit ahead of the trade deadline more often than not. I meant to go through and look at like every year that Preller's been the GM and what they've done at the trade deadline. Maybe I'll do that later today in like an article. But certainly they're going to do something. We don't know what the Padres are going to do, but I would be more shocked than any other thing if the Padres did nothing over the next 15 days. So my question to you is, what do you think they should do? And I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, Kyle Higashioka, like you could go get him. He was a really good catcher for them last year. He's got some pop. He knows the staff for the most part. I'm sure him and Nick Pivetta could get along pretty quickly. Is that someone that you've been circling? Are there any left fielders out there that you're like, I really wish they would go for that guy? I'm going to let you present your ideas, and then I will present to you my bad ideas and hope that you haven't seen them or heard them already and get your reaction to those.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything too far, out of left field. One of the recent names that came up, Dennis Lin, I think his piece on Sunday mentioned White Sox catcher Corey Lee, who is,
San Diego kid, I think.
If you read, that would be news to me. If you read up on him, there are too many like Luis Campusano similarities, like might not be the best defensively. He's done pretty well in AAA, and so I'd be a little bit concerned from that standpoint. Sean Murphy's come up. I think, if you can make the money work there, that would seem like a good idea. I would love Kyle Higashioka back. The thing with I was thinking about this earlier today, like what do you think the average, and I don't have the answer to this, but what do you think the average age of like Padres catchers has been the last 5 years? Like it's got to be well into their 30s is what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Between Diaz, Caratini, Higashioka, Maldonado.
Wait,
even also.
This is a really good question that I saw presented the other day on social media in a very snarky way. And mentally, I was not able to answer this question. Maybe you can help me. Who is the last catcher that the Padres developed that was good? This is where, that's what happened to me too. Because your first thought is like, Hedges? No, he can't. Really
Benito
hit.
Santiago?
I guess. Did Carlos Hernandez come through the system? That was like a little bit before my time.
And admittedly, all of this would be well before my time, having got here in 2019. And so, I was here in like prime Austin Hedges years.
Sorry, I interrupted.
That kind of speaks to the point where it's just been this revolving doors of guys in their like early mid 30s who aren't really. I think there was a hope that Austin Nola was around for a little while, but would be kind of long-term option. Then the bat kind of goes quiet. You got Caratini and Alfaro, and it's just one thing after another. And it seemed like, okay, maybe Kyle Higashioka would be the guy. They didn't want to pay him the 4.5 or whatever he got from the Rangers. And so I like the idea if it's like a Corey Lee from the White Sox. Adley Rutschman is a guy that's come up. He's struggled with Baltimore. His numbers have dipped, and there's some
really?
questions.
I love him. He's great.
There are he's a guy that's been brought up. This is just pure speculation, Twitter chatter, that sort of thing. Orioles are certainly in a position where they might consider selling. Sean Murphy's 30 years old, so he's kind of in that 30-year-old window. But if he gets somebody for a few years, there's some semblance of hope that he could be a guy for a little while. Like, I don't think that was the case with Caratini. Obviously not the case with Kyle Higashioka. To have some sort of stability there, and hopefully maybe Ethan Salas in the next couple of years develops enough where he can kind of take the reins. But I would love to see them get in a position where they have an answer there, where we're not going to spring training like Elias Diaz and who, Luis Camposano and who's it going to be, where you kind of know for the next couple of years who that is. I mean, catcher, left field, potentially some bullpen help. I do think they're in a position. Do you trade Cease? Like, you could be a buyer and a seller at the same time. You know, address some issues over
Who
here.
would buy Cease?
Shed some money. I think when you have the track record, the stuff, I think there's going to be somebody that feels like, okay, maybe we can fix him. Maybe we can tap into something. Maybe we can get him here and hammer out some sort of, 3-year deal, 2-year deal, what have you. I don't know how much you'd get from him at this point, but maybe that's an option to get a younger catcher, get a left fielder, and then you're obviously going to have to fill that spot in the rotation. That's where A.J. Preller is going to have to do A.J. Preller things. But I find it to be a very interesting trade deadline from that standpoint, in that you have maybe some guys you'd be interested in parting ways with, and you'd see some money walk out the door, and you have some very clear needs that need to kind of get buttoned up if you're going to make a run at this thing in the fall.
I agree with a lot of what you said there. Also, to follow up, just to make sure I was right, the reason Corey Lee was on my radar even before Dennis Lin said it was a buddy of mine who played baseball at UCSD sent me his name, and he's like, Padres should go after this guy. He was my bat boy when I played at UCSD. So I knew he was here as a kid. I just looked it up. He went to Vista High School, born in Escondido. And just like anyone else who could probably play catcher for the San Diego Padres, currently batting 192. So, and in a, not super pitcher friendly environment in Chicago. So I don't know that really helps the main issue that they have at catcher. Sure. And then I was talking to Darren earlier this week, and I was like, I don't know, the catcher does a lot more than hit. Wouldn't that screw up your whole pitching staff if you bring in a guy who none of them have ever thrown to, and you're like, hey, this is our everyday starting catcher now? Like that's where people started pushing back, going, well, I think they should go get Higashioka, who was here last year and caught most of these guys, and that would be easy. And I'm like, yeah, sure. That makes sense to me. That's not a long-term play like you're saying. Would I love the Padres to have like a 24-year-old catcher who's like a top 10 catcher in the league, and it's just like, yeah, it's going to be our starting catcher for the next 10 years? Yes! I've been dying for that since the days of Ramon Hernandez. Like, it never seems to happen, or it never seems to stick for whatever reason. Rest in peace, Yasmani Grandal's short stint with the San Diego Padres. I don't know. Corey Lee's the guy. I put a couple of trades together mentally in a post on Section 1904. And they were really like guys that I thought the Padres could get for next to nothing, for kind of Dylan Cease reasons, right? Where it's like, do you want Dylan Cease? He's really bad on the road this year. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. If you think you can fix him, you can probably just try and, sign him to something in the offseason, whatever. The guys I had them going after were Tyler O'Neill, who's an outfielder for the Orioles, who has basically been pushed out of their starting lineup. But in his career, every time he's been like an everyday starter, he's hit over 30 home runs. So he's got power. The other guy I had was Brett Rooker from the Oakland A's, who they signed him to a contract that I guarantee you they do not want to pay him for, a 5-year, $60 million contract that goes up every year, which means the A's definitely every year they're going to take a little bit less and a little bit less to get rid of him because they don't want to pay that contract. And he's a DH/outfielder who has played for the San Diego Padres before. And then as kind of part of a Rooker deal, I looked at, they have a catcher named Shea Langoliers, who is like good defensively, and he's a good hitter. He's not a great hitter. He's not going to hit 30 bombs, but he might hit 250 while being a good defensive catcher. And I was like, and he's young too. He's like 27, something like that. I'm like, that's a guy you could grab and be like, all right, this is our catcher for the next 6 years. And same as you, I was very excited by that idea. I do think this is going to sound weird. I don't think the social media like pressure does a lot on the Padres, but the Jarren Duran smoke that was going around, there was reports that Preller's like really, really excited for this guy. I saw one blogger or whatever go like, I have reports that the deal's already done. And then everyone started going, this guy has no power. Like, why do we need a slap hitting like left fielder? You can go get Travis Jankowski off the street if that's what you want. Like, why would you want a left fielder with no power? Like, this team needs power. And granted, Tatis and Merrill looked like they got back some of their power in the couple games before the All-Star break. That would help things. Maybe you don't need as much power from left field. But do you think that what they need at least in left field, catcher, they just need to make a non-zero. But do you think whoever they add for left field needs to be someone who can be one of the leaders on the team as far as like home runs?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think, especially if you're able to slot in Gavin Sheets regularly as your DH, you expect to get 20 homer a year type power from Merrill, 30, 35 from Tatis, around 30 from Machado. I think it just needs somebody that's like going to keep the line moving, and Duran had 48 doubles last year, 34 the year before, 25 so far this year. He's got 10 triples this year, 14 triples last year.
Yeah.
I think just extra base. Like, I don't need homers. I just need a little extra base, and I think somebody that's going to give you some productive at-bats. He's got speed. He's going to help out defensively. And so I think he's just going to do productive things. Mike Schilt clearly likes just versatile, productive. He's always patting guys on the back for the other things that they do other than like the homers or what have you. And so I think somebody that's just going to give you some sort of productivity, even if it's not like 30 homer a year or even 20 or 25 homer a year type power, I think will be useful. And I think in the process that strengthens the bench because Gavin Sheets isn't having to play in left field. It's going to strengthen your defense because Gavin Sheets isn't having to play in left field. And so I think he's a useful piece. And look, I'd be interested in buying low on Luis Robert too. Maybe there's a Luis Robert, Corey Lee package, available, and you buy low on Luis Robert. I think one of the things that we've seen, and I went back and looked at this a little while ago, is the Padres have consistently gotten diminishing returns on these trade deadline acquisitions. You go down the list since, say, 2020, every single player, with the exception of Garrett Cooper, has pretty much vastly underperformed based on where they were when they got here. And so I do kind of like the idea of Luis Robert buying low, a change of scenery candidate, a guy that's clearly got some talent. And at the very least, you got like an athletic, toolsy type of guy out in left field that I think is going to kind of raise your floor a little bit over the Bryce Johnsons of the world.
So I'm kind of proud of Padre fans because I feel like they've all kind of coalesced around the Padres don't need to be big time buyers, but they also don't really need to be sellers. They kind of need to be like small time buyers. Like I think everyone agrees with that, which I can tell because yesterday when I released a clip from Darren saying that the Padres should trade Ethan Salas and Leo DeVries, like every person was like, this is the worst take I've ever seen. My favorite were the people who were like, can anyone just have a podcast now? And I was like, yeah, that's how this works, buddy. Anyone can have a podcast now. But I'm proud of people for saying that. Do you agree with that mentality, or do you think that they should push in big? You're like, take Salas and DeVries off the board.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of keeping those guys around. Certainly DeVries. I mean, if the return was right for Salas, like I'm sure I'd warm up to it. But I think what we've learned, and the last 2 years are a great example of this. You need depth. Like depth, chemistry means more than just another flashy big name that you're going to hope lives up to the back of their baseball card and they can carry whatever else is in the bottom of the order. 2023, they banked on Juan Soto being Juan Soto, Xander being Xander, Manny, Tatis. That was not the case. The team was terrible. Last year, they got rid of Juan Soto. There was less talent, period, on the team, but the talent was spread out. They had arms. They had a catcher that could hit. Guys like Donovan Solano and David Peralta were really, really effective. There was a chemistry and like a unity on the team that meant something and paid off more than just kind of the big star-laden roster that we saw in 2023. There's plenty of star power on this roster. I just think you need guys. I think you need professional baseball players in left field, at catcher, off the bench. And if you have that, I think you look at a team that you probably feel pretty comfortable in terms of their playoff chances.
That's fair. It's actually, you just reminded me of something. First of all, this is not a criticism of you. It's going to come across as a criticism of you. It's not a criticism of you. Every time I hear someone go like, every time the Padres trade for a player, he just gets so much worse when he gets here. Then why are you advocating for them buying anything? They should just be sellers every year. They should never trade for anybody. If your argument is that any player the Padres get, they're going to bring in and that player is going to be worse than what they had to pay to get that player because his value has diminished since he's become a San Diego Padre, you should not trade for players. We should get a different GM who doesn't believe in trading. That's besides the point. There's a quote that I saw that I was trying to source. So forgive me if this is made up, but I saw it in like 5 different places. And it was a quote from Manny Machado, and it was a few months ago, and he was talking about how the game is getting younger and the older guys are getting pushed out. And part of the quote, the part that made me raise my eyebrows, was he was like, we could use a hitter. We could use a good hitter off the bench. David Peralta's just sitting at home. And he said that, and I was like, he helped us so much last year, just sitting there. We're giving at bats to guys who can't hit. He's just sitting there. Why? It doesn't make sense to me. And I was like, he's right. Why don't they just sign David Peralta? I don't know. Maybe they're like, it's too late. He's got to ramp up. Maybe he's not in shape. I don't know. But you mentioned David Peralta's name, and I was like, that Manny quote popped back in my head. Again, I was trying very hard to track it down. I saw it referenced in like 15 different articles, but it was never sourced to anything. And I was like, God, if this is made up, I don't want to make a big thing about it. Here I am making a big thing about it. I want to move on.
I mean,
oh, good.
To answer your question, you have to, like, I get what you're saying. And I think that's essentially what I'm saying as a reason why not to just shoot for the big fish, because even Juan Soto wasn't giving you Juan Soto level productivity when he got here in 2022. And so I think the approach that I'm advocating for is a response to underperforming players. Like, let's not go for some all-star, some this or that. Like, let's just go for a guy that's going to hopefully give you some sort of consistent production. And you have to, like, they're in a position where they have to upgrade. Like, I would love it if they didn't have to do something, but we seemingly are in this position every single year where there is a glaring need on this roster, and you have to address it and then hope that it is successful.
That's the hope. All right, last thing, because you've already given me way more time than I asked for. I want to talk about the Los Angeles Chargers just for a second. Because I've gotten a half dozen comments about this in the last 2 days, and I need to address it. First of all, the Chargers are having a practice in San Diego, or several practices in San Diego coming up, I think, like next month. I don't care. I'm not going to be there.
Oh, I think it's like next week, actually.
It's probably next week. I don't care. I'm not going to be there. You probably need to be there for work. I don't care. They also put out their alternate uniforms for the upcoming season. Everyone's focusing on the one that looks like it's highlighter yellow and going like, God, this is horrible. Teams do this every year. It's the color rush thing, I'm sure, where they just take like their 3rd or 4th team color and go like, everything is now this color on this uniform. It looks terrible. Had they made the socks white, it would have been fine. Actually, if you look at the pictures of it, the sock part that's in the shoe is white, and then it turns into yellow once it passes the shoe. This is all besides the point, but they screwed it up. The thing that I want to talk about, the thing I keep getting messages about, is Darren and I talked about this yesterday. There is supposedly potential plans to build a 50,000-seat stadium in Chula Vista that ostensibly could be for an MLS team, or Darren even, I think, hypothesized something about like a Mexican team that wanted to have like an American headquarters or something. I've gotten 6 different people, at least, reaching out to me on Blue Sky, on email, on text, going, hey, if that stadium gets built, could they get the Chargers back? No. Like, just no, period, end of story. Why? I'm glad you asked. 1, the smallest stadium in the NFL is 61,500 seats. It's Soldier Field. And the only reason it still exists is because it's Soldier Field. And you know what Chicago wants to do? They want to build another stadium that's bigger than that because they feel held back by the fact that their stadium only holds 61,500 people. There's never going to be a 50,000 seat NFL stadium. Never, never, never. 2, for the Chargers to do that, and let's say at Chula Vista, these developers build a free stadium. Go Chargers, come on down, free stadium. Same as in LA, where they're paying $1 a year in rent. Free stadium. That free stadium seats 100,000 people. That's twice the revenue you get on game days. Like, they'd be giving up half their revenue and moving out of a top 2 market in the country. Like, there's no financial sense in the Chargers moving from SoFi Stadium in LA to a 50,000 seat stadium in Chula Vista. And on top of that, if it happened, I don't think San Diego would accept it. I don't think everyone in San Diego would just be like, hey, the Chargers are back. Awesome. Great news. I don't think it would go like that. And I think that the practices next week or whatever are kind of going to prove me right. There'll be some people there. There's still some Charger fans here. I get that. But I don't think there's enough to support an NFL franchise, even if it was a good idea, which there's like 7 reasons why it's not a bad idea. It doesn't make sense. It's not an idea. It's just madness. Am I crazy?
A couple things. I am of the mind, and again, I didn't feel the pain the way San Diegans felt the pain. I moved here in fall of 2018.
Bless your heart.
So I missed all that.
Lucky. You're really lucky you missed all that.
I was sad from a distance. I felt the tug for San Diego because it sucked, and I did not like that was happening. It didn't feel right. I do think people would be really excited about the NFL here.
No. The NFL, yes. If there was an expansion team that came to San Diego, I think that might work. But like having the Chargers leave LA to come back to San Diego does not work. And even if there was an expansion team, I don't think it works in a 50,000 seat stadium.
Okay, there's enough there for like its own episode, and I'm probably not the most qualified person to speak on that. But what I can speak to is the stadium proposal because I've read the proposal.
Hey,
and there are a few very interesting lines in the proposal. One said that the stadium would be part of phase 2 of construction, and it would be timed based on sponsorship, tenants, and bold moves. That's line number 1. So it's up to whoever comes in, they want to make a bold move. I could think of one thing that would be a very, very bold move. There was another line that said the proposed stadium, the size could change based on the tenant.
So up or down.
So that's interesting. 50,000, I actually reached out to somebody who covers these things, I believe for Sports Business Journal. Haven't set up an interview yet, hoping to do so. His response was, 50,000, that sounds like a typo. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. That does sound like a typo because it doesn't make sense for MLS.
No, that would be 25.
Make sense. It doesn't make sense for Liga MX. And oh, by the way, they actually use the Toronto Blue Jays as an example of a team coming across the border from a national league. So I think they are viewing this, they are viewing this as an opportunity to expand Liga MX into a different country, into a town with a passionate sports fan base. Now that creates all types of stuff with San Diego FC, and again, that's its own episode.
Yeah.
But just an interesting line. That size doesn't make sense for Liga MX, doesn't make sense for MLS.
Doesn't make sense for NFL.
Doesn't make sense for NFL. But if you want to make bold moves and if you're willing to draft a new proposed stadium based on tenant, Subtract 15, 20,000, he got soccer. Add 15, 20,000, he got NFL. I'm not naive enough to say that, oh yeah, football is definitely coming. But what I do know based on reading this proposal, and if you look at what they talk about with tennis and other aspects of it, like they're going for it. I don't know if this is actually going to work out, but they have grandiose plans and hopes and dreams. And so that's what I find very interesting about this. They want to make bold moves, and they are going to alter the scope of that structure based on who their tenant is. It could certainly go down, and I think there's a lot of people that are wondering, can it go up as well?
I hate this. I hate being back in stadium talk.
I love it
you
so
didn't have
much.
to live through this, man.
You're right. You're right.
We had like 5 straight years of stadium talk. We had Boltman yelling at the mayor. Like things got so wrapped up in what this developer wants this and this developer wants this. Which team wants to join them? This team wants, but only if it works for them in this way. And like everything you're talking about, I'm like, why would SDFC want to play in a stadium that was bigger than that, right? If they were like, hey, it's going to be 75, we're bringing in an NFL team. I guess SDFC's just stuck at Snapdragon, but they don't appear thrilled with Snapdragon because that is a 35,000 seat American football stadium that's definitely not built for soccer, and in which if it's a hot enough day, like people are leaving in ambulances, and the parking lot is dirt. And so like I don't know. I don't know. I think San Diego Football Club, they're kind of the biggest team in town right now that's not the Padres. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I do. And I think they would tell you that the stadium was built for soccer. I'm not saying that you're wrong in saying that. But I think that's their perspective, that it was built with the soccer team in mind. Now, whether or not like the Darren Smiths of the world would be able to tell you, like, does this make sense? The shade structure thing is what it is.
Yep.
I think they're able to skate by that, knowing that they've played one afternoon match so far this season. So I think they're kind of like, not really our problem.
Right, it's not their problem. It's San Diego State's problem. It's the Waves' problem. But like SDFC knows that they don't want to play afternoon games as a result of that.
But fortunately, because of Apple TV, I mean, they're seldom in the situation, the opportunity to do so. But they're in year 1 of a 20-year lease. Now, this stadium, we're looking down the road. So who knows? But I don't know. I find it interesting. Admittedly, like you said, I didn't live through it, and so I can be naive and find it fun to speculate while folks like yourselves are rolling their eyes like, I don't want to go through this crap again, and I completely understand it. But I find this proposal interesting, and maybe because it is not just shooting for one thing. Football and NFL are not mentioned, if I looked at this correctly, once in that proposal.
Sure.
They mention MLS high-level USL Championship, which I'm like, okay, and Liga MX. So soccer seems to be what they're shooting for, but what I find interesting is they seem like they're like, hey, what's out there? What could we lure here? You'll like this. This was a conversation that started in the newsroom yesterday. I know how it began. Again, this is not mentioned in the proposal, but I was like, could there be an outdoor WNBA stadium? I don't know. That could be kind of cool. How do you mitigate the wind? That's a great question. Probably not going to happen, but I just like how it's fun and open interpretation, and we'll see where this goes in the next decade.
You couldn't possibly do that.
But how cool would that be?
It would be great, but like, what do you do if it's a 90-degree day? They're playing basketball in 90-degree weather. They're getting sunburned. Like, no, it can't. No.
You have some sort of. They would build a shade structure. They would do what Snapdragon did not and build a shade structure.
At least someone's going to do it. For what it's worth, and I'll kind of end on this. Like, look, I love the NFL. Like that's a hot take in San Diego these days. I was the biggest San Diego Charger fan you could find. They left. I don't particularly care about them anymore, but I still watch the NFL. I don't love the NFL like I used to because there's not a team here. There's not a place for me to go and tailgate and attend the games and talk to other people about it. But if there was some way for the NFL to return to San Diego, no one would be happier about it than me. I just don't think it's possible. And like every couple years, I get a text from someone like, "Hey, did you see the Chargers news? Maybe they could move back to San Diego." It's not happening. If I do see some sort of path for the Chargers to ever return to San Diego, for the NFL to ever return to San Diego, I'll let everyone know on this podcast. We'll throw a party. I'll buy a cake. There'll be candles. I'll have party hats. It'll be great. I don't think this is that. I don't think this is that. All right, Darnay, thank you for joining me. Thank you for filling in for Darren. You were wonderful. This was fun. This is a fun first conversation for us. I feel like there's going to be more. I actually told Darren that I would invite you back at a time when he is also here, and the three of us can go back and forth, and you and Darren can laugh at me. But thank you so much for your time. If anyone listening to this likes the sound of Darnay's voice, go listen to the On Friar podcast. Or watch it on YouTube as I do from time to time, usually while I'm folding my laundry. It's a pretty good podcast. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
All right, everyone. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure if Darren will be back tomorrow. We'll play that one by ear. I do have an interview scheduled with one of my favorite MLB reporters, in which we're going to talk about a lot more than just baseball. So that's going to be really fun. So stick around for that. Stick around for maybe me writing about AJ Preller's trade line tendencies on the website on section1904.com. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for being our community. We will talk to you tomorrow.
This is a man's world.
Hey,
But it wouldn't be nothing
yeah.
without a woman.
Hey, started out riding, man, we together.